Good morning, everybody. Going to go ahead and get started here. My name's Jesse McCulloch. My talk is called The Future is Here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And for those of you who are here for the last talk where the main subject was you're not irrelevant, don't panic, stay in your job, I'm here to come tell you that I'm making you irrelevant. You should start panicking and switch your jobs right now. A little bit of a joke. So a little bit of the agenda for my talk. I'm going to talk about who I am, why I'm here talking to you today, what is mixed reality, how mixed reality has been shown to us in the movies, and kind of the things that we're combating to try and move past the conceptions that have been placed by Hollywood, and then why it's relevant to all of you. So a little bit first about who I am. Again, my name is Jesse McCulloch. I'm a program manager with the mixed reality team at Microsoft on the developer ecosystem team. So what does that mean? It means I get to do awesome things like make your jobs easier as developers. So how do I make your life better as a developer? My whole job is to come out, talk to you guys, make sure that everybody's got the tools that they need to easily develop on our ecosystem, make sure everybody has a good way to talk to us, because we actually really enjoy talking to developers. It gives us a lot of information about what we're doing right. It gives us even more information about what we're doing wrong, and how we can make things a little bit easier for all of you. And then we do a lot to give you all the documentation that you need so that you guys can spread the word and join our ecosystem and start building with us. And if you want my contact information, that QR code is gigantic in here, so hopefully you'll be able to get it. So what is mixed reality? How many of you have heard this term before? About half of you, great. How many of you have heard Microsoft's definition of it? Because ours is a little bit different than I think a lot of people are using. Even fewer are excellent. So when Microsoft talks about mixed reality, what we're really talking about is a spectrum ranging from the physical world, the stuff we can feel and touch today, all the way to a completely digital world that we have in something like virtual reality. And that spectrum is actually broken up into two pieces, and these are terms you guys have probably heard: virtual reality, augmented reality, XR, AR, VR. These are all parts of the spectrum along the way. And when we start looking at what is AR and what is VR, we're really talking about devices, right? So we have virtual reality devices. I brought one with me today. This is the Oculus Quest. $400 standalone, doesn't require a computer, super easy to get into for people. This is about the first headset that we can really say that about. And when you put this on, you go into a completely immersive environment. You can't see the real world other than through the setup. And everything that as a developer they want you to see, they have to build. And then we move to the other side of the spectrum when we talk about augmented reality. And there's actually two different forms of augmented reality today. There's mobile augmented reality with your phones. Who here played Pokemon Go? Couple people, okay. That was like intro to augmented reality, right? You can see the little Pokemons in your real world, and it's using the camera on your phone and placing digital information into your real world. And that's kind of the definition of augmented reality, is placing digital information into your real world. Then you move a little bit further along the spectrum of augmented reality, and you get devices like the HoloLens or the Magic Leap. And these are head-mounted devices that allow you to see the real world, but also put digital information into it. And the nice thing there is it's hands-free, right? If you're using augmented reality through a phone, you're using one hand to hold it. And if you're trying to do something where you're teaching somebody through training or whatnot, trying to have them do a task while holding a phone isn't really realistic. But when you can put it on their head, like the HoloLens, then that's where some real magic starts to happen. Here's the HoloLens 2. We announced this back in February at Mobile World Congress. It's the second iteration of our hardware, and it's pretty spectacular. It's got hand tracking and eye tracking, We can do on-device, deep neural network learning to train models. Very cool technology, and if you guys are around later today and want to see it, find me, and I'll definitely be doing some demos. So we're talking about mixed reality as a spectrum, and the ideal place that we get to eventually is one device that does it all. You've got a device that, when you want to see the real world, shows you a transparent lens, and then eventually when you want to be fully immersed in a VR environment, the lens goes dark and immerses you completely in this completely new world that your developer wants you to see. Now, we talked about mixed reality as the third computing platform. So when you look at the history of computing, PCs were kind of the first as this first computing platform that we talk about. 1970s, Bill Gates founds Microsoft, and the idea is to put a PC in everybody's home. And it took a while to get there, right? I mean, mostly it started in enterprises where people dealt with PCs, and then they became more commonplace and found their way into people's homes. The second wave of computing that we saw come through was smartphones. And again, in the last talk, we talked about this. It took a really long time to get from landline phones to even mobile phones, and even further to get to a smartphone. I think she was saying almost 150 years to go from the first landline phone to the smartphone. And we really see mixed reality as this third wave of computing, where we're going to move beyond the 2D world and start thinking about computing in a spatial environment. One of the neat things about this is that it's not just constrained to the devices, and actually it becomes more powerful when you don't constrain it to the device. These devices are mobile computers. They're the same as a smartphone as far as computing power goes. They're using mobile chipsets, mobile GPUs. So the more we can do to offload that kind of stuff and process in the cloud, the more we light up what you can do on the devices. We talk about this intelligent cloud, intelligent edge. So there's some things that you actually want to do on the device. If you're using the device to detect a projectile coming at you, it makes a big deal whether you're doing that in 1 millisecond on the device or 30 milliseconds taking a round trip to the cloud to process the visual information and then come back. And that can be the difference between you and the Okay. Test, test. There we go. Sorry about that. So when you are, what was I saying? When you're doing processing in the cloud, that round trip can make a difference. And there are some things that we want to do on the device. And there's some things we don't really care. If you're looking at searching for some information on the internet, you don't really care if it takes you 30 milliseconds to do that round trip to the cloud and do that processing so you get a better result set. And so when we talk about intelligent edge, we're talking about all devices that can sense. So it can be a camera that you put in the workplace, or it could be a HoloLens, or it could be a drone with a camera on it. All these are intelligent devices that can send information back from the device to the cloud, where we can do processing and start building smarter and smarter worlds. So what does our mixed reality journey look like? So originally it looks like that Kinect for Xbox back in 2010. This was kind of the first device that we could put in people's homes that could detect where they were in space and what they were doing. It had full skeletal tracking. Fast forward 6 years, and we had the first edition of the HoloLens, which actually took the depth sensor out of the Kinect and put it on our heads and allowed this device to sense the world around us. 2017, we released a commercial edition, so we moved it from a developer tool to an actual tool enterprises were using and still are today. 2018, we introduced some first-party applications for HoloLens that allow enterprises to really start getting immediate value out of their purchases through either training or the ability to do remote assist, where somebody can be wearing a HoloLens, call out to a subject matter expert. That subject matter expert can see what they're seeing, direct them through tasks, and they can even draw into the person's real world. And then again, this year we introduced the HoloLens 2 and the Azure Connect and our mixed reality services. So this is the fun part of the presentation. What does mixed reality look like in the movies? Where have we seen this before? I had no idea we were doing this in a movie theater. That effect's even cooler. So May 25th, 1977, the movie comes out. And as far as I'm concerned, probably the first time we've ever seen a hologram in movies. Anybody know what movie I'm talking about? Any guesses? Star Wars.
And where you come from?
I saw part of the message.
I seem to have found it.
General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire. I regret that I am unable to present my father's request to you in person, but my ship has fallen under attack, and I'm afraid my mission to bring you to Alderaan has failed. I have placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this R2 unit. My father will know how to retrieve it. You must see this droid safely delivered to him on Alderaan.
Now you all can say you've seen Star Wars in the movie theater. So this is kind of the first introduction that people have had to this idea of holograms in our real world, right? Way back in 1977. Just about 4 years ago is when we actually started to be able to do something like this. We call it volumetric capture. We've got studios around the world where we can do this, and we take about 140 cameras and film every angle of somebody and do a bunch of processing, and we can actually do video like this and then display it through mixed reality. So fast forward about 12 years. This is one of my favorite clips in this presentation. Back to the Future 2.
Shark still looks fake.
Hi, friends.
I love that line about how the shark still looks fake. We're watching Jaws 19 up there on the screen. Super cartoony, super fake looking. And when I look at mixed reality today, this is kind of the era that we're at, right? We're still experimenting, still trying to figure out how it works and how spatial computing looks and feels to people. And I feel like a lot of people, when they put the HoloLens on, have this same reaction that Michael J. Fox has of this like wonder and amazement and kind of fear, because it is a crazy new thing that we're doing here. And I hope to show it all to you guys. So then we move forward to 2002 with Minority Report. And this is a movie that we often talk about when we talk about mixed reality or augmented reality. We have these clips of how they're moving data around.
I show 8 Howard Marks in the district, sorting by race and age.
Under license registration. See if I can capture that.
Running out of time. You know, I was thinking maybe I'd play hooky, stay home today.
Right meeting.
Working too much.
Can you grab that?
So clear.
I got 6 licenses. Where do you want them?
Over here, please.
Now, the interesting thing is there's not actually any augmented reality going on here, but this is probably one of the biggest movies that gets talked about when we talk about augmented reality. What they're actually doing is just using gestures, right? We've seen this before, and the incredible thing is that gestures are still incredibly important because it's how we actually interact with things. You know, when we decide we're going to clear a table in anger, you know, we swipe and move everything off of it, and we see those kind of interactions here. This is all part of natural user interaction, but I love the fact that there's not actually any augmented reality going on in this clip, but we talk about it all the time, and case in point, I'm using it in my presentation as well. Next movie, Iron Man 3.
I've compiled a Mandarin database for you, sir. Drawn from SHIELD, FBI, and CIA intercepts. Initiating virtual crime scene reconstruction.
Okay. What do we got here? Name is an ancient Chinese war mantle, meaning advisor to the king. South American insurgency tactics. Talks like a Baptist preacher. Lots of pageantry going on here, lots of theater. Close.
The heat from the blast was in excess of 3,000 degrees Celsius. Any subjects within 12.5 yards were vaporized instantly.
No bomb parts found in a 3-mile radius of the Chinese theater.
No, sir.
Is there anybody in this room that does not want to be Tony Stark right now? Because that's the world that I want to live in someday, right? We move data around, we can immerse ourselves in scenes, go through problems that we're seeing. It's just a fantastic vision of what we hope the future will be like. And the last movie was actually released this year. Ready Player One. Anybody watch it? Good. This is actually more on the virtual reality side.
I don't think this is it. No scoreboard, no obstacles.
Maybe a dance challenge?
Whoa!
Old school.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Music loud, with me on, being dangerous. I was born in a tolerant. That's okay, and you may look the other way.
This is actually a really super interesting movie to think about. There's a lot to live up to in this kind of vision of what world we'll live in, right? You see Wade Watts there with a virtual reality headset on, haptic suit, basically without trying to give too much of the movie away, you know, he's living an alternate life in this virtual world that he almost never comes out of. And is that a world that we want to live in? It's just a fantastic question we all need to ask ourselves. Like, there's so much amazing things that you can do in augmented or virtual reality, but are they all good? And just like any technology that we work with and we create, it's up to us as developers to make sure that we are asking ourselves these kind of ethically and morally questions about whether we should be doing some of the stuff that we do, not just because we can do it. So why is it relevant to this audience? Like, why am I here talking about mixed reality to you? I mean, the reality is I want you all developing on our platform, or any mixed reality platform, actually, because this technology is moving fast, and the more people we have developing on it, the faster we can make it better and make it something that is going to be more relevant to more people. It's actually been around relatively short amount of time, but we're moving it towards a space where you can develop for it regardless of what kind of developer you are, whether you're a .NET developer, using Visual Studio, OpenXR, Linux developers, ARCore, ARKit if you're a mobile developer, game developers using Unity or Unreal. We support all these different development methods. And it's a big business. And currently, right now, we're in the enterprise space. We're seeing about $44 billion over the next 5 years. When we move into productivity and collaboration, we're going to add another $20 billion to that. And then on top of that, you throw in consumer AR, consumer VR, we're looking at $80 billion. These are the projections over the next 5 years. So it's a huge space, and it's not too late to get into it. And if you want to join our mixed reality developer program, we'll send email updates, lots of feedback opportunities. When we come and do local events, we send out notifications so that we can get people out to see us and hear about us. And really, I know this is a big topic, and it's one that generally a lot of people have questions about, so I want to leave a lot of time in my presentation for Q&A. And I'm happy to answer questions just about anything that you can think of to ask around mixed reality and augmented reality. So I want to open the floor to questions. And I've got awesome swag if you answer or ask good questions. Nobody? Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, and correct me if I'm wrong, the question was, has Microsoft been thinking about accessibility when we look at this field? What kind of accessible things are we doing to help with the creation of applications? Is that about right? Yeah. Yeah, so accessibility is actually a huge theme for Microsoft across the company, and it's something we think about a lot. Whether it's in gaming or mixed reality. And so the biggest thing that we do for mixed reality developers is try and get people to think about multimodality input. It's really cool to be able to reach out and touch a hologram, which you can do with HoloLens 2, unless you have a mobility problem, right? If you can't actually reach out and touch stuff, how do you interact with it? And we don't want to take away these experiences from people who have different disabilities. And so when we think about it, we talk about doing multimodal input, so voice commands along with touch input, eye tracking. So there's lots and lots of ways for people to do different things. And we want to make sure that we give good guidance to developers that when they're thinking about their app and designing their app, that they're actually thinking about, developing for everybody and not just for themselves or people like them. Yeah, so the question was, we showed a lot about the visual qualities of mixed reality, but what about the other senses like touch and smell and sound? Sound is a little bit easier because we can actually already spatially place sound based on what we can do today. So we can make sound like they're coming from behind somebody, 10 feet away or, in front of them, 15 meters away. When you start getting into like touch and smells, you start getting into a little bit harder problems to solve. So as far as touch goes, you can do haptics, and there's companies out there that make haptic suits and haptic gloves. The biggest problem we find with that is the barrier of entry, right? So it's hard enough to get somebody to put on a headset and use it. It's really hard to get somebody to put on a full haptic suit and a headset to use them. So we just haven't gotten to the point where these things are small enough and comfortable enough and easy enough to use that it's really even something we're thinking about. And then when you move on to smell, there are companies who are experimenting with smell. The nose is such a sensitive thing. You can actually there's sense that you can pick up out of the air at like 0.00002 parts per million or something like that. And it's really hard to replicate sense. There are companies that are working on it. It's not something we're working on just because there's not really much value in it for us yet. But I think as technology gets better and we start learning better about how smells work and how we can replicate them, then that kind of stuff will move into the market. But we're looking probably a long ways off on that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, do we think we'll get to the point where humans will augment themselves to be able to see mixed reality? That's one of those things that's really hard to predict. Like, I think the ideal thing that we can think of today is, using a contact lens, something that's super unobtrusive to be able to see these mixed reality environments. It's going to take us a long time to get there. And whether we get there faster by doing that or through something like a brain neural interlink, where we can actually just send signals to the brain and trick it into seeing things, I don't know. I think these are all interesting problems that lots of people are looking at. Just how fast we get there is really unknown. It's really easy for us to overestimate how fast we'll get to the future, and then we underestimate the impact that it's going to have. Anybody else? Yeah. I haven't seen it. I've read a little bit about it. I have friends who are working on brain control interfaces, and they're all super smart people. Say that again. Yeah, I mean, I think it's feasible to be able to look at brain interfaces and get some signal out. They've already proven they can do that. It's just a matter of being able to tell, somebody's emotion or what they're seeing. I think things like that are a lot easier than being able to control people's, what they're seeing actually through their eyes. So I think it's a progression of what we're going to be able to do with a brain interlink. And where we're at today, I think, is super basic. We can tell whether somebody wants to activate something or not, but whether we move it past that and how long it takes us is still up in the air.
You mentioned about the income predictions for 5 years, and the biggest chunk was the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So how much of that is the adult content?
So the question was, when we start looking at those predictions for consumer, how much of that is adult content? I have no idea. I mean, you look at the internet and what the usage of it is used for, and I think you can probably make fairly accurate predictions similarly. It's not an area Microsoft is particularly interested in getting into. So, and I should say right now, enterprise is really where we're focused, and mostly it's because the devices cost quite a bit, right? $3,500 for a HoloLens. Enterprises can take that cost and they'll see productivity gains out of it, whereas a consumer will never spend $3,500 for a headset that doesn't really have that many applications for them. So our goal is always to reduce the cost and make it more immersive with each iteration that we go through. I know there's another question in the back. So the question was, when we look at something like the Matrix, how long will it be before something like that is possible? I think the bigger question is, are we living in a simulation today, right? We don't know. we could be. We could all just be a computer simulation. I think that when you look at virtual reality, you can have similar worlds like that in virtual reality. Is it fully immersive? No. That's going to take things like haptic feedback or a brain interface where we can use that to produce smells and sights and feelings. I guess a bigger question is like, what would be the purpose of wanting to do it? Do we want to put ourselves into the matrix? Right, we could be. Anybody else? When will HoloLens 2 be available? We've committed to shipping it this year, but we haven't given any other dates beyond that. So we haven't announced pre-order or shipping dates yet. You already knew the answer to that. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you everybody for coming, and I hope to talk to you throughout the conference.